Hello everyone! Z-image models have been around for a while now. A lot of creators have trained LoRAs on top of them and shared them for free. The problem is that there are so many options and it can be hard to know which ones are actually worth using. That is why I made this video. I tested 10 popular LoRAs for Z-image turbo and Z-image base. Out of those 10, I would personally recommend 6. In this video, I will compare the results and show you how well they work. You can also find all the download links in the description below. By the way, if you use Running Hub like I do, you do not need to download these LoRAs manually. You can use them directly on the platform. You can also publish your own LoRAs there. If other people use your LoRa, you can earn rewards. If you want to learn more about the platform, check the link below. The first LoRa I want to recommend is Z-Image Fun LoRa Distill. This is a group of LoRa's designed to speed up image generation with Z-image models. For example, the 2 steps LoRa can reduce the sampling steps to just 2 steps. There are also 4 steps and 8 steps versions. In my opinion, the 2-step version is the most useful because it gives you the biggest speed boost. Another good thing about these LoRa's is that they work with both Z-image turbo and Z-image base. Even so, I would mainly recommend them for the base model. Let me show you why with a few comparisons. In this first example, the image on the left was generated with Z-image turbo. The image on the right was made with Z-image turbo plus the 2 steps distill LoRa. The distill LoRa reduces the sampling steps from 8 to 2. This is much faster, but there is a clear drop in quality. A lot of fine detail is gone. Her trousers look smoother, and the rocks and grass in the mountains also lose texture. If we zoom in on the hands, you can also see the finger problems in the image made with the distilled LoRa. With that much detail missing, I don't think it is worth using this LoRa on turbo just to save 6 sampling steps. But the result is very different when we use it with Z-image base. Let's look at another comparison. The image on the left was generated with the base model using 40 sampling steps. The image on the right was generated with the distilled LoRa in just 2 steps. Here, I actually think the distilled version looks even better. The fingers are also correct. And if you still want more quality, you can always refine the result afterward with the turbo model. In fact, a lot of creators like to combine Z-image base and Z-image turbo in the same workflow. Z-image turbo often gives you better image quality, but the results can feel less varied. Z-image base is usually more creative. So one useful method is to use the base model with the distilled LoRa to get a rough image very quickly, then refine it with turbo. With the distilled LoRa, you can get a rough composition in just one sampling step. That takes almost no time. Let's look at one more comparison. Without the distilled model, the image on the left is basically just a mass of random pixels, but the image on the right, made with the distilled model, already gives you a rough idea of the final composition. After that, you can denoise and refine it further with the Z-image turbo model. Alright, now let's move on to another very interesting LoRa called PhotoFox. This is a series of slider LoRa's that give you more control when using Z-image turbo. For example, the angle up and down LoRa lets you control the viewing angle of the image. Let's look at some examples. The image on the left was generated with Z-image turbo without any LoRa. As usual, the camera view is at eye level. The image on the right was generated with the angle up and down LoRa at a strength of -5. This makes the subject look like it was photographed from below. Now let's look at another comparison. This time, I set the LoRa strength to +5. That changes the view from a low angle to a high angle. That is what makes it a slider LoRa. You can adjust the effect by changing the strength, almost like using a slider. This series also includes other useful slider LoRa's. For example, the raised LoRa lets you shift the appearance of the subject from more European to more Asian. The body LoRa lets you change body shape from thin to heavy. You can also control things like aperture, image quality, zoom levels, and more. Okay, the next LoRa I want to introduce is Z-Image Turbo Flow DPO. Let's compare a few images. At first glance, the lighting looks better and the overall image quality also seems improved. Let us zoom in for a closer look. In this example, the two images still have similar compositions because I used a fairly low LoRa strength. Of course, you can increase the strength if you want a stronger change. Now let's look at one more comparison. This time the lighting is much more dramatic and the compositions are more noticeably different. Finally, I want to recommend 3 LoRa's that can change artistic style: Lenovo Ultra Real, Photo Factory, and After Dark. Let's start with Lenovo Ultra Real. This LoRa creates images that look like they were taken with an older cell phone camera. Let's look at some examples. You can see that the image on the right, made with this LoRa, has a narrower dynamic range. The highlights are very bright, while the shadows become much darker. The colors are also less saturated. These flaws may actually make the image feel more realistic. Here is another comparison. If you want to use this LoRa, make sure to include this trigger word in your prompt. The recommended strength is 0.8 to 0.9. The author also released a Z-image-based version of this LoRa, but in my tests, that version sometimes produced blurry images. Okay, next is After Dark. This LoRa gives your image stronger lighting and more visual impact. It was trained on a mix of photographic content, with a focus on low-key photography, film noir, and fashion photography. Let's look at this set of images. In the image on the right, you can see one trick that fashion photographers often use with long dresses. They let the dress spread out into the foreground. This adds depth to the shot. Here is another comparison. Notice the interesting shadows on the woman in the image generated with this LoRa. That is the magic of the After Dark LoRa. Keep in mind there is a specific trigger word for this model as well. You will also want to use the suggested settings provided by the author. Last, we have Photo Factory. Compared with After Dark, this LoRa adds more of a cinematic feeling. It also brings out beautiful details that almost looks like an oil painting. Let's look at these two comparisons. There is another benefit to using LoRa's with Z-Image Turbo that you may have already noticed. Images generated by Z-Image Turbo often end up with very similar styles, very similar faces, and even very similar compositions. LoRa's can help break that pattern. For example, these 8 images were generated as a batch without any LoRa. The faces, clothes, and the lighting all look very similar. Now compare that with this next batch generated using a LoRa. The variety is much better. Alright, that wraps it up. I hope this video was helpful. If you want more tutorials, please consider subscribing to the channel. Bye!